Last night, there was something fun about that. Anytime you go to Philadelphia and you spank that ass, the way the Knicks spanked the Sixers, and I don't want to hear that Joel Embiid didn't play because, honestly, that's the issue with the Sixers. The biggest problem with the Sixers, the biggest reason I would not fear the Philadelphia 76ers or even look at them as a real threat to knock the Knicks off in the postseason is that he is injury-prone, never reliable, and whether it's a game on February 11th or a game in late April or early May, Joel Embiid doesn't play. So I don't want to hear it as an excuse. The New York Knicks, to their credit, in the final game before the All-Star break, where they easily could have taken a vacation, from top to bottom, whip that Philadelphia ass. They even showed toughness with Alvarado getting in my boy Trenton Watford's face. It was just all around. I got to hand it to you. It was all around a good night if you're a Knicks fan.
Yeah, even Kat probably heard us talking about him last night. Went through contact, got to the rim, didn't bitch and moan about it, just played hard-nosed basketball, which is what you expect from this team. But again, you could have seen this coming from a mile away. This is what Mike Brown's teams feel like this year. At some point, you're going to get these confounding letdown games against opponents who they have no business losing to, like the Indiana Pacers, like the Sacramento Kings, whenever that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then they turn around and then they destroy the other inferior opponent.
Yes.
Like the Brooklyn Nets.
Yes.
Like the 76ers without Joel Embiid. This team is potentially great, but also so grossly inconsistent, it's frustrating for a fan.
Yeah, and a lot of what you said, I do want to get into, and I want to ask for just one day only, a one-day-only favor. Because I do believe in sports when we move on from people, whether it's athletes or coaches, we talk about it, and then we move on. Like I even made the declaration yesterday when it comes to the first baseman of the Orioles, I'm not going to talk about him anymore.
PA-20.
Well, I'm going to call him Baby Bird. That's the name I'm going to call him.
Baby Bird?
Yeah, he's a bird. He's a baby bird.
What?
I don't know.
He's an Oriole?
Whatever.
Do you feed him with your mouth?
My point is, I'm no longer harping on him, okay? And I know that
that would be Pete Alonso for those who missed this year.
You're allowed to say it. I'm not saying his name anymore. For one day only, and the reason I say today is the day to do it is because we are at the All-Star break. We're at the halfway point. I think today is a fair day to have a discourse around Tom Thibodeau versus Mike Brown. I do. Because
in what context?
In the context of we are halfway through this season. We're more than halfway through the season, but you know what the All-Star game kind of commemorates?
Right.
It's like the halfway, the unofficial halfway point of the season. It's a chance also to take a deep breath. Like the Knicks aren't going to play another game for 8 days. They're going to go to the All-Star game, and then we will reconfigure ourselves on February 19th against the Detroit Pistons. I was in favor of this move of getting rid of Tom Thibodeau. A lot of people listening were not. And I think that it is unhealthy to go through an entire season saying, Tom Thibodeau would have done this or Tom Thibodeau would have done that. But I do think for one day only, and that is today, because we are at that unofficial break of this season, I think it's fair to look at the differences between Tibbs and Mike Brown. And even though it will all be determined by postseason success, we know that. How do we feel about it? Like, are we as Knicks fans, especially those that were against the move, watching this team, okay, you've gotten a chance now to watch them play 40 or 55 games. 55 of 82, more than half. You've watched a lot of these games. You very quickly described some of the negatives, some of the positives. Do we feel, Knicks fans, in a better place with Mike Brown as the head coach? Do we feel like we're in the same place with Mike Brown as the head coach? Or do we feel worse? And I do think for one day only, because I don't think Tom Thibodeau's name should be mentioned much more after this.
Yeah.
But I think today is a fair day to do it, knowing we do have a break in the action, if you will. And then at the end of the season, absolutely based on the results. But how do we feel? And how do you feel? Like right now as we sit here, do you feel better about this team, worse or the same?
Well, I feel better only because I feel like there is depth on this squad now that I can believe in at some point. Whereas with Tom Thibodeau, let's say at this exact point, you probably felt better in the moment, like better in right now, better at the All-Star break because they played well, but the minutes were stacking up. And the only thing you're thinking about is, this is awesome, but somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
Like you just knew somebody was going to get hurt. And then when that person, whoever it may be, Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, doesn't matter, somebody gets hurt, there was no solution. There was no trusted solution because that bench had never seen the light of day, basically. And so you were happier last year, but probably more cautious because you were scared something was going to happen. This year, I don't think you're worried about the injury issues because these guys can play without some of their stars and still dominate because they develop the bench so much. So I think you feel better, but the inconsistency just kills you.
Yeah. Look, the number one thing that you just touched on, and I think this is the number one thing that jumps out at people when comparing this new era of Knick basketball or the new administration of Mike Brown versus Tom Thibodeau, is the usage of the bench and the overusage of your starters. I was crunching the numbers, and dude, they back up everything we think.
Right.
So, for example, last year, the leader in minutes per game for the New York Knicks was Josh Hart. He played 37.6 minutes. Mikal Bridges played 37 minutes. OG Anunoby played 36.6. Jalen Brunson played 35.4. And Karl Anthony Towns played 35. That's last year. What have I told you? All of those minutes I described is greater than the Knicks' minutes leader this season.
Is that right?
Absolutely, that's
Wow.
right. The leader in minutes this season is Jalen Brunson at 34.6. That would rank 6th on last year's Knicks team.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like, sometimes we have these opinions, but they're not really backed up by the facts or by the data. This is absolutely backed up by the data. Josh Hart went from 37.6 minutes to 30 minutes. Now, granted, injuries have played a role in that. Of
course.
But that is a huge jump down of 7 minutes. Mikal Bridges went from 37 minutes to 34.5. That's also pretty significant. 2.5 minutes per game over the course of 55 games? That's 110 minutes. And we've talked about Mikal Bridges and his lack of aggressiveness and his kind of being afraid of contact. And I have theorized that a part of it is the man has played so many games and so many minutes. So if Mikal Bridges is going to continue to play every single game, which he has,
right,
it probably behooves him and the team to cut down on minutes. OG Anunoby last year averaged 36.6 minutes. It's down to 33. That's 3.5 minutes. Again, that's a huge kind of fall down. Even Jalen Brunson's gone from 35.4 to 34.6, which is not as big as the other guys, but that's a minute change. And Karl Anthony Towns has gone down nearly 4 minutes from 35 to 31.3. So your stereotype, everyone's stereotype about Tom Thibodeau versus Mike Brown is 1,000% backed by the data.
Yeah.
These guys, the guys that you're going to need to play big basketball in April, May, and June, are playing significantly less minutes than they did a year ago.
It's interesting because last year you would be okay with it because, at least I would. This is how I would address it to those that were concerned about the injuries, is that you're conditioning yourself. You're getting yourself in position so that when you come to the postseason and the bench gets much shorter, so instead of playing 12 guys, you're playing maybe 8, that your starters would be prepared for it.
Right.
They have the conditioning, the physicality to last through the postseason because it gets really long, especially when the bench gets short. But you also then couldn't help but worry about the injuries.
Yeah.
Because everybody on this team felt injury prone 1 year or depending on whatever year it was. And so it's interesting. This year, I feel like you're saying the opposite. Okay, they don't have the conditioning, but at least they're fresh.
I'm not worried about the conditioning.
I'm not either, but that was the excuse last year.
Right. No, and you brought that up a lot, that was actually one of the positives of having a head coach that overworked his guys, that, hey, come the grind of mid-May, they'll be ready for it. I think that this is a good thing. Now, it doesn't mean guys won't get hurt. Guys can get hurt. It's basketball.
Right.
It's sports.
You look at OG. He's got, what is his toenails?
Right. His toenails fall off. We haven't seen him in a week.
Right.
Like, it does happen. And the Knicks have dealt with injuries this season. I mean, we talked about Josh Hart, who's had various injuries, the OG Anunoby injury. Karl Anthony Towns has missed time here and there. Jalen Brunson missed a handful of games. So it's not as if you're going to eliminate injuries. But as a whole, when we're comparing this Knick team to a year ago, the cut down on minutes is obvious and it's real. The other thing, and again, I think it's backed up by fact, is that, and this is a compliment and a negative, so it's really up to you to determine if it's a good thing or not. I believe this team this season has had more bad losses, more unexplainable, inexplicable losses than last year's team. And I think Indiana the other night is a great example of it.
Yeah.
And I went through last year's schedule just to back up my stereotype. And it's kind of true. Like, they didn't have a lot of bad losses last year. With that said, do you remember what the biggest critique of the New York Knicks last season was during the regular season? And if you don't, I'll remind you.
No, tell us.
They couldn't beat good teams.
I was going to say, they couldn't put away big teams.
The Oklahoma City Thunder can't beat them. The Boston Celtics can't beat them. That's not true this year. Now, the Pistons, sure, they have not played well against Detroit. No one's going to deny that. The Pistons have had their number. But what about what they've done against Boston? What about what they did against San Antonio? Like, they've played well against really good teams.
Denver, they took them to overtime and won the game.
Absolutely. So I think what we've seen from this Knicks team compared to last year through the first 55 games is that I think the ceiling is higher, but the basement is lower. Like, when the Knicks have played bad, the other night, it's worse than what we saw with Tibbs, but I also think the best of the New York Knicks has been better than what we saw with Tibbs.
Do you think that that's just a random Wednesday motivation factor? You know, so like,
what do you mean by that?
So they play the Indiana Pacers on Wednesday, yesterday.
Oh, gotcha.
Or 2 days ago.
I didn't know you were being literal.
No, literal.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's Wednesday. We're a couple days away from the All-Star break. Yeah, you know what? We can beat this team without trying. And so the one thing that you knew you were getting from a Tom Thibodeau coach team is that you're playing hard the whole game.
Right. He was going to grind your ass.
You were grinding, and if you're half-assing it, he's into you. Well, whereas Mike Brown is kind of just accepting of, all right, you guys will figure your way out of this. You know, I trust you all to play at the right level, and when it matters, you'll turn it on. And sometimes you just can't turn it on. Mm-hmm. We talk about this in all sports. You can't just flip the switch and all of a sudden get to a heightened level, especially when you've become a team. Unlike last year with Tibbs, you become a team that is almost solely dependent on the three-point shot.
Okay.
And then when
that's where I would think is more of the answer. But keep going.
And so when you're off, you're off.
Yes.
I mean, and we know what the cliche is in basketball. Hey man, got 3-point shooters. You're missing them. Just keep taking them.
Well, that's what the Celtics tried last year.
Right. That's what and it cost them.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Knicks getting to that point as well.
Yes.
Mike Brown doesn't have yet. At least we haven't seen it. The plan B should. We start shooting 28 to 32% from three-point range. There's no plan B.
But do you agree that over the course of these 55 games, and I know, Knick fans, that the ultimate judgment is going to be the postseason. We all know that.
Right.
They have to go further than they went last year. That's going to be the ultimate judgment on Mike Brown versus Tom Thibodeau. All you can do in the middle of February is look at what we've seen so far. Would you agree with my assessment that the bottom of the Knicks so far this season has looked uglier than the past?
Yes.
But the top of it has also looked better?
Yeah.
Like last night.
Because they scored 140 points last night.
No, I know. The best of them has been better. And I think, like you mentioned, Tom Thibodeau grinding the guys out on why there weren't as many bad nights. I think that plays a role in it.
Of course it does.
I don't want to dismiss that. I think that's part of the value of Tom Thibodeau. Like, I'll make this very clear as we do these comps. I think Tom did a great job here. Just because I thought the Knicks were wise to move on from him doesn't mean he didn't do a great job here and get the most out of these guys for a time. But I think that what the ultimate goal is to go beyond that. Mm-hmm. So I will give Tom Thibodeau credit that maybe they don't have as many losses like the other night against Indiana with him because of his style and because of the minutes he's asking his players to play, or maybe the grind that he puts them on. But I also don't think we've seen the best of it. And I do think a part of it is the three-point shooting. Mm-hmm. Like, the Knicks have played 31 games this season in which they have shot at a higher percentage than their opponent from three, and they're 28-3. And when they get outshot by their opponents from three, they're 7-16.
Yeah.
Like, there's a clear line of demarcation. And when you're taking more shots, which they are this season as compared to last, you put yourself at the mercy of, if these go down, like last night in Philadelphia when Jose Alvarado is making 153, you look better. Versus those nights when you go 7 for 40 and you look like crap. I do think that plays a role in it.
Yeah, it does.
But ultimately,
that's philosophy.
Yeah, and it's a different one.
Yes.
But ultimately, like, when I squint my eyes, and I'm going to include the defense in this, I think the best of the Knicks this season has looked better than the best of the Knicks last season. Defensively and offensively.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. Yeah, you're right, because the commitment to ball movement and finding the open shot, save when Jalen Brunson gets into his ISO mode. But for the most part, you saw this early in the season, the ball movement is exceptional. And it's always the right pass and the right shot. And then defensively, there's a hustle effect that I think you get from new additions like Alvarado, but with Mitch being healthy, like there's a different level of defensive accountability, I think, but it wanes. And that's the issue.
Yes, it does wane. Like, you have to look at, okay, what does it average out at? And here are just the numbers to be fair. At the All-Star break last year, the New York Knicks were 36-18. At the All-Star break this year, they're 35-20. So they are a game and a half behind the pace of last year's team, just based on wins and losses. But what if I told you their defensive rating is better this year than it was last year at this very time?
That's right. And you feel that because there's certain games where they do it right.
And that's the part of me that looks at this move, and again, it's going to be determined by postseason success. We all know that. But as we sit here today, I can't tell you what's going to happen in April, May, and June. Nobody can. But what I can tell you is I feel like the ceiling of this basketball team is higher right now in the Mike Brown administration than it was with Tom Thibodeau. And I know we love Tom. We all appreciate Tom. But tell me if I'm wrong, Knick fans. Like, do you agree with that? Disagree with that? Or does it not even make a difference to you? I mean, I'm sure there's some Knick fans who are like, I kind of feel the same way. 888-808-1019. The other statistical difference is the attempting threes that we talked about. Last year under Tibbs, they attempted 34.1, which was in the bottom half of the league. This year, it's a shade under 40 at 39.8. They were attempting nearly 6 threes more per game this season than last season. And they're shooting at a clip that's also a little bit better. Like last year, they shot 37%. This year, they're right at 40%.
Right.
So
which is great.
It's amazing. Like you're taking more and you're making more. So I get the record and I get the badness of the losses. But I actually feel a lot better about this team than last year. And a part of it's the competition. I admit that. Like the Boston Celtics last year felt like the boogeyman. The Cleveland Cavaliers, at least in the regular season, put a lot of doubt in your mind. This year, Boston has a lot of questions about Jason Tatum's health as well as they've played. Detroit is the new boogeyman. Nobody believes in Cleveland. I mean, there is not a Knicks fan alive.
Even though they've won 5 in a row.
Doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I think it's a combination of two things. It's A, their postseason failures, but B, no one believes in James Harden.
Yeah.
So fair or not.
In the postseason.
He's
going to be a great regular season player always.
Yeah.
It's always what he does in the postseason.
I think the only team that really Knick fans fear, and I think they're overrating it, is the Detroit Pistons. And I get why. Because they've whipped your ass in the regular season. But as we learned last year with Boston, we learned it last year, and I hope people remember the lessons of it. Just because you get beaten in the regular season and just because you whip a team in the regular season doesn't mean that's going to translate to the postseason.
All right.
So as of right now, Tiki Barber, as an IBO, 35-20 versus 36-18 as we sit here at the All-Star break. Do you feel better about the New York Knicks heading on that freight train towards the playoffs this year versus last year?
Better, because there's more people I can count on. I'm not depending on Jalen Brunson being the clutchest player in the NBA. That's what it felt like last year.
Yeah, but do you also feel better about Karl Anthony Towns this year versus last year?
Well, statistically,
because that's where the variation
statistically he's having a worse year.
He is.
And I feel like Mike Brown doesn't like him.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so I worry about it, but I can't let it bother me. It's that kind of situation. It's ultimately going to be on Cat. Does Cat want to be what Mike Brown wants him to be? And if he buys into it, he'll be fine, and the Knicks will be great. If not, and he bitches and moans like he does to the officials in the middle of games, then it's going to get ugly.
The other thing that I really think benefits the New York Knicks, and this has nothing to do with Brown versus Tibbs because it would have been the same thing anyway, is I love the experience that you gain by losing. I really think that helps, not only in sports but in the NBA. And that's been one of my critiques of Detroit, that this is new for them. They're having a great regular season. I can't take anything away from them. They had their one defeat a year ago to the New York Knicks. They don't have the battle scars of the postseason. This team does.
Right.
This team knows what it's like to lose an absolutely brutal game one at Indiana, be chasing the rest of the series, and lose the series to the Indiana Pacers. They know it. And for a lot of these guys, they know about a year earlier in losing to attrition in the Indiana Pacers. And some of these guys know about a year earlier in losing to the Miami Heat. I think there is something to be said about the experience of losing. And the Knicks have that.
Right.
The Celtics have that. Detroit does not have that.